When it comes to top consulting firms like McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, we tend to think they use some secret formula in their presentations. Whereas in reality, their secret is less about their slides and more about passing off first-year associates as subject matter experts for billable hours. Jokes aside, in this video, I'm breaking down real slides from MBB to show how we can use the exact same low-effort techniques to improve our own presentations. Starting with the first small change we can all make immediately: never share a single data point in isolation. Jumping right into this BCG report on AI in the workplace, let's say we were presented with just these numbers. 52% of survey respondents say they're optimistic about AI in the workplace, and 30% say they're concerned. As viewers, we don't know what conclusion to draw until we see the sentiment from 5 years ago. Now there's a trend. People today are less concerned by AI, and there's even a 17% jump in optimism. This additional context is also critical in pushing the narrative forward. Why was there a 10% decrease in the levels of concern? What were the main drivers? This smoothly sets up the next few slides to talk about how consumer-facing tools like ChatGPT, Midjourney, Google Bard increase familiarity and help demystify AI for the everyday person. For our own presentations, there are several ways to compare one data point to another. You can use a time frame for the same type of data, year on year or week on week for revenue numbers. Benchmark against other players in the same category, countries versus countries or companies versus companies, for example, or benchmark against an industry average. In this Bain presentation, we see Ethiopia has a 63% increase in this food production metric versus a 12% increase for the industry as a whole, meaning Ethiopia is producing well above the industry average. To quickly recap, number one, sharing another data point helps you control the narrative. The viewer might see a 30% level of concern as high until we show the number is 40% 5 years ago. Number two, it helps push the story forward. What happened between then and now for concern to decrease by 10%? And number three, common ways to compare data points include timeframes, benchmarking within the same category, or against the category average. The second low-effort tip from top consulting firms: use the SCQA Framework. I studied over 50 presentations from McKinsey, Bain, and BCG for this video, and believe me when I tell you, every single one of their decks use the situation, complication, question, and answer framework. And it goes like this. They always include a situation and complication at the very beginning, pose a question based on said situation and complication, spend the rest of the slides answering that question, and boom, hit you with $1 million bill at the very end. Just kidding, the last part isn't always true. Sometimes just $900,000. But look at this executive summary from the BCG report. The respondents today are more optimistic about AI than they were 5 years ago. That's the situation. They're setting the scene. But that level of excitement varies, and there's some deep-seated concerns. Complication. You can usually recognize the complication when you see the words but or however. What can be done to address these gaps? The question. And the rest of the presentation is dedicated to answering that question, culminating in a final slide with 3 key recommendations: 1, 2, and 3. Or take McKinsey's State of the AI report. Situation. We're still early in the world of generative AI, but the technology is already pretty widespread. Complication. Many organizations and companies are not addressing the risks from this new technology. Next slide. Leading companies are already ahead with generative AI technologies. And although it's not explicitly stated, the implicit question is clear. What are the leading companies doing to address those risks? And the rest of the slides are again dedicated to answering that question. I have loads more examples. Well, everything I found is example. Like this infographic from Bain is even structured in the situation, complication, question, and answer format, right? And I'll link all this down below so you can see I'm not making it up. And if you want to learn more about the SCQA framework, check out this amazing video from the Analyst Academy. By the way, MBB refused to sponsor this video. Apparently I make too many jokes, but it is supported by those of you who subscribe to my paid community. In addition to weekly productivity tips, you get to participate in my AMA Ask Me Anything sessions. More information linked down below. Technique number 3 used by all the top consulting firms, the pyramid principle. Quick refresher on what that is. Instead of saying, I like practical tips, sarcasm, and borderline inappropriate jokes, and that's why I'm subscribed to the Jeff Su YouTube channel, you say, I'm subscribed to Jeff Su because I like practical tips, sarcasm, and borderline inappropriate jokes. You start with the main point, then follow up with sound reasoning. And there's a very simple reason why top consulting firms rely on this communication style. When we work on a project, this is how it usually looks like. As junior people, compared to the amount of work we do at the beginning performing research and analysis, we don't actually spend that much time summarizing our findings since we already know the answer by the end. However, when we present to client executives, they don't give a fuck about the work we did. They just want to know the final answer and maybe understand the key findings that led to that answer. In this Bain presentation on the metaverse, the question they're looking to answer is, how long will it take for the metaverse to start becoming popular? Zuckerberg thinks it's already popular, while the rest of the world says never. According to Bain though, they tell us right away it'll take another 5 to 10 years, and they came to this conclusion by looking at comparable technologies like the smartphones, game consoles, the internet, and PCs. The wrong way would have been to start off the presentation with, well, we first looked at the smartphones and it took this long, game consoles, internet, PCs took this long, and based on all this research, we think the metaverse will start scaling in 5 to 10 years. To quickly recap, if you're used to presenting chronologically, this is a question, here's what I did, here's what I found, and here's the action we need to take. Flip that around. Here's the action we need to take, and here's what I found. Moving on to the next low effort tactic, use color with intention. Starting off with a simple example from BCG. The contrast between the green and the gray immediately indicates there's difference between these 3 steps and these 2. And what's that difference? Well, it seems steps 3, 4, 5 are enabled by generative AI, and these 2 is what we have right now. Our brains were first drawn to the color, then we looked for the explanation for that color. Now let's look at this slide from McKinsey. What do you think? It's a bit awkward, but you can probably still tell the slide is trying to compare these numbers, these numbers, these numbers, and these numbers. What if I stopped lying to you and reverted back to the original colors? Much better, right? And although there's 6 colors on here, your cognitive load has actually been reduced compared to black and white, because now you know instinctively to compare the dark blue with dark blue and light blue. Final example for color. We're not trying to compare any data here. We're not trying to highlight anything particular, but I think we would all agree colors make this text-heavy slide more readable. The bolded green text keeps the viewers engaged, and the green yes, red no aligns with our preconceptions that green is for go and red is for stop. And without even reading the text, you know the yellow part is most likely a disclaimer. To quickly recap, using colors in our presentations help focus the viewer's attention on our main message, reduce cognitive load by grouping related information, making it easier for the audience to process, and improve readability for text-heavy slides. Technique number 5 is the most underrated one so far, and it is to know when to use a table instead of a chart or a graph. As a quick refresher, each type of chart is used for a specific purpose. You use the basic bar chart when you want to compare categories against each other, since you can easily compare the length of the bars. We use the clustered bar chart when we want to compare numbers within the subcategories like so. And the stacked bar chart focuses on the overall size of the entire category while still managing to show the relative change of each of the subcategories. And my personal favorite, the line chart, is best used to show trends and changes over time because all the individual data points are connected together, so you're kind of forced to look at the data as a whole. And the conventional wisdom we hear is to use graphs and charts as much as possible to visualize our data, right? And simplify our slides. But there's a specific instance where a data-heavy table works better than a chart, and that instance is when you need to show precise values. Take this table from BCG's presentation on the most innovative companies in the world. We first see the rankings 1 to 10, 11 to 12, so on and so forth, and the companies rank from left to right, top to bottom. Most notably, we can clearly see the year-on-year change in rankings for specific companies. Tesla moved up by 3 compared to last year with Elon out the way working on X videos, and Meta dropped by 5 for completely unknown reasons. Can we technically show the 1 to 50 ranking in bar chart format? Probably, but it would be impossible to also show returnees, new entrants, and the relative year-on-year change in rankings. In practice, the next time you want to visualize data, ask yourself whether you want to compare specific data points, in which case use a bar chart, whether you want to show a trend, use a line chart, or if you want to call out a precise value, stick to a table. Bonus tip number 6 for everyone who stayed until the end. Use free tools like Flat Icons, Slides Carnival, and Color Hunt to create presentations effortlessly. I have an entire walkthrough you can check out here. See you on the next video. In the meantime, have a great one.